Hello everyone, welcome to ServiceDesk Plus Masterclass 2022. We're in the second season and the fifth episode, which will be the conclusive episode of this year's Masterclass episode series. So, in this series, we're going to explore the latest features of ServiceDesk Plus. I'll, I'm Steffi Benjamin, and I will be your trainer for this session. So, before we begin, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. All attendee lines are muted by default. If you have any questions, please use the questions panel on the left side of your screen to send them to us. At the end of the session, we will have a dedicated Q&A where we will address all your questions. And if you miss any part of the masterclass, don't worry. A recording of this masterclass will be sent to your registered email address in a couple of days. And if you have any feedback or questions, either about ServiceDesk Plus or about this session, you can send them to my email address on screen or to hello@servicedeskplus.com. So before we jump into this session, I want to take some time to talk about Zia. So Zia is a host AI-based assistant which has helped users manage the service desk better by providing a conversational interface, improving the self-service abilities of ServiceDesk Plus, and to predict fields and suggest contextual actions. So I hope you can take some time to take part in a quick survey where you can let us know how you find Zia's AI capabilities and what we could do to improve better. So you can see the link on my screen, and my associate would have shared the link in the chat window as well. I'll give around 30 seconds so you can log into this URL and share your thoughts with us. And thank you everyone who took the time to respond. And if you haven't taken part in the survey, or if you haven't completed your survey, don't worry, you can continue finishing it throughout the session or at the end as well. So I hope we can serve you better and come up with better features for Zia going forward. So jumping into this session is going to give you a nice tour of ServiceDesk Plus and latest features we've introduced in. So the features we'll be looking at today would involve how you can perform time-based actions to resolve requests, how you can execute conditional actions on requests, and how you can integrate UEM products to help your IT admins manage and secure endpoint devices. We'll look at how you can improve your maintenance activities using ServiceDesk Plus, and we'll see a couple of features. We'll see a feature about approvals and how approvers can now ask for clarification, and how the administrators can manage their problems using triggers and custom functions. And finally, we'll take a look at a couple of security related features that we have introduced. So the first feature I want to talk about is how you can automate requests with time delayed actions using a feature called request timer actions. So this is part of the automations feature we have in ServiceDesk Plus. So until now, all the automations we've had focus on how you can apply automations when a condition is satisfied. So they're usually logic based or conditional based, or sometimes they're based on templates. But now with request timer actions, you can apply automated actions when a specific time is reached. And this will help you resolve requests with keeping the time passed in mind. So using request timer actions, you can execute actions during and after a delay time is reached. And by executing actions, I mean that you can send notifications, you can run custom functions, update field values, execute if or if else actions, and trigger webhooks. So we'll go into the application now and we'll see how you can configure request timer actions. So this is the login screen. I'm going to log in as the administrator. If you have administrator privileges in ServiceDesk Plus, or if you are a technician, this is usually the screen you're greeted with. You are greeted in the home page with a number of widgets. To configure automations like request timer actions, you need to go to the admin tab here, and we have an automation block where you can see request timer actions. So I'm going to go there, and to create a new timer action, click this button here, and you will be greeted with the new timer action form. So in here, you can mention the name and description, and you can specify the condition when this timer action should be applied on request. So you can apply this timer action on specific templates or all templates, and you can select for the condition to be checked. For example, you can say if the request status is open, let's apply this request. So let me find status. Yes, here is status. You can say if the status is open, or if it is assigned, let's apply this timer action. So with by selecting these two configurations, you can decide where the timer action should be applied And then you can go ahead and define the when under this stage block here. So timer action is applied in stages. So in each stage, you can define the time delay that should be calculated and what actions should be applied. So in the first stage, we can define the initial delay based either on manual calculation like 1 day or 1 hour or 1 minute, or you can go ahead and define it based on date field. So under date field, you can define how long should a request wait in the help desk before the action is applied, and this wait time is calculated based on a certain date field in the request. So date fields could be anything like completed date or due by date or the OLA due by date and so on. And if you have additional date fields, you can also select them. So here I'm going to simply select completed date, and then you can say if you want this timer to be applied before the completed date, after the date, or based on a percentage. So if you select before, after, or the date matches, you can select the time involved as well again. Or if you select percentage, you can basically calculate the percentage of time passed between two date fields, and when a certain percentage is reached, you can apply the timer action. For example, here we have two fields, created date and due by date. So now you can imagine a virtual line with created date as your start and the due by date as your endpoint. And you can say maybe 25 percentage. So when 25 percentage of time has completed after the created date relative to the due by date, then the timer action will be applied. So for this session, I'm going to just define it by days. I'm going to just say 1 day for simpler purposes. And then you can go ahead and configure if you want the same stage to be repeated more than once. So by default, the stage is executed one time and usually proceeds to the next stage. But if you want to repeat the same stage again and again, you can enable this option, and you can select how many repetitions you need in this drop down here. And you can say if you want it to repeat every 1 day or after every 1 hour or so. So ideally, what would happen is once the request once the timer is scheduled on the request, the stage time is started to calculate. So ServiceDesk Plus starts calculating the delay time. So once 1 day is complete, the action will be applied, and then ServiceDesk Plus goes back because we have repetition, waits for one more day before executing the same action. And if you have more than one repetition, it would again go back, wait for another day, and execute the same action. So ideally, you would have multiple executions of the same action by configuring repeat action. You can also define when you want the delay time to be applied. So if you want to calculate the delay time only during business hour or SLA hours. So if you have 1 day, which is basically 24 hours, you can calculate the 24 hours either throughout the entire day, or you can calculate 24 hours based on 8-hour period on 1 day, and the next day it would start from the 9th hour, 10th hour, and so on. And this will ensure that you're not applying any action outside your business hours. For example, if you send a notification outside your business hours, your recipients might not catch the notification and respond to it on time. And similarly, if you send notifications or perform automations outside your SLA hours, you might end up accidentally violating SLAs. So to prevent that, you can restrict the time delay only to business hour or SLA hours. And if the request moves to a status where the status timer is stopped, you can pause the timer calculation as well. So the initial delay time will be paused when the request reaches a stop timer status. And once the request moves to a different status, the timer will start calculating the delay time again. Now by stop status, what do I mean? So in request, we have multiple statuses configured. So these statuses are configured under customization block. And you would notice that these statuses refer to the progress of a request. So here we have multiple statuses, some of them like assigned, in progress, or on hold, or configured by default. You can also create new statuses if you want. And usually you have this stop timer field here. Now this is not the same as timer action, but rather it is just a related feature. So if this refers to whether we should calculate the time spent by a request in help desk when it reaches a particular status. So if a request moves to on hold, it means the request has been paused for a while. So you would pause all automations during that status, and that is what we configure using this stop timer. So if stop timer is enabled, you can pause the timer delay time as well. And once you've configured all of this, you can go ahead and set the rules to be applied, which is basically the automations. Now, automations are applied in two instances. One, when the initial delay time is reached, or during the initial delay time, and after the initial delay time is reached. So, in during rules, you can configure actions to be performed. You can click a new rule, or you can associate existing rules. So, if you want to select a new rule, let's provide a rule name. I could say field update here. You can provide the description, and you can say when you want to execute this rule. Now, if you are familiar with ServiceDesk Plus already, or if you have been a part of a previous masterclass, you would notice this looks quite similar to business rules, and you're not wrong. The during rules is the configuration is quite similar to business rules. The only difference being this is applied to timer actions. So here you can specify the criteria on when this during rule should be applied. If you don't want to specify a criteria, it's completely all right. It will be applied regardless of whatever the request details are. And then you can execute the actions to be applied. So you can either execute custom actions or you can abort the process. For example, if a request reaches this particular stage and a specific criteria, like maybe the approval is denied, then you might feel that the request is outside the scope of fulfillment, or it might sometimes even be outside the scope of the services you offer. In which case, you can abort the process and provide a reason on why you're aborting the request from moving forward. Or you can execute custom actions as well. And in custom actions, you can perform field updates. So you can update the field or value of anything. I can say category should be general, and even if a request has an existing category, the during rule will override the value and enforce this value in the category field. Or if you want to avoid overriding, you can disable this option here. You can also execute other actions like custom functions, which will help you perform actions in other modules of ServiceDesk Plus. For example, when a ticket reaches a particular stage and the delay time is completed and the during rule is being executed, you can go ahead and associate the request to a change request, or you can use the request to create a purchase request, and so on. And similarly, you can also execute scripts. Now, custom functions are written using Deluge, which is Zoho's proprietary language. Or if you do not want to write custom functions, you can write scripts using common languages like Python, and you can upload them to ServiceDesk Plus. And then you have if and if else, which are basically conditional actions. Since we'll be looking about them in a while, I'm not going to go in deep about them for now. So you can save and associate the during rule, and you can see it's present. You can then go ahead and configure after rule to be applied after the initial delay time is completed. Now, it is not mandatory to configure both during rule and after rule. You can configure either one of them and it's completely fine. So if you want to configure after rules, again, you have to click new rule, or you can select an existing rule. If you're creating a new rule, you will notice it's quite similar to during rules again, except that this time we don't have the abort process, because you wouldn't want to abort a process after you've decided it's completely okay to proceed with it. And then when it comes to actions, in after rules, you cannot do field updates, but you can send out notifications and execute webhooks. So webhooks will help you place calls to third-party applications. For example, if a ticket reaches a particular stage and a particular time, you can maybe create a Jira ticket, or you can send a notification in Slack, and so on. So all this external connect can be achieved using webhooks. And again, you have if and if else as well. So I'm not going to associate an after rule for now. So we've configured it, stage 1, and now you can go ahead and configure another stage. You can add up to 10 stages in one request timer action. And all that you will have to remember is, for consecutive stages, the delay time depends on the delay time of the previous stage. So if the delay time of the stage 1 is completed and all repetitions are executed, only then will the delay time for stage 2 even start to calculate. And then if you have configured, say, 1 day here, and the stage 1 is completed, and then ServiceDesk Plus will wait for 1 more day before executing stage 2, and so on. Otherwise, every other configuration is pretty much the same. So now let me take you to an existing timer so I can show you a proper use case and how the fields can work in sync with one another. So we have a timer here created to say if a ticket comes into help desk and it is having the status as on hold, then We'll wait for 3 days to ask the requester for an update, and if there is no update, we'll cancel the ticket after 3 days. So this is our idea. So how would we configure it? So first we have a stage here, and in the stage I've configured my delay time as 1 day. So once the ticket comes into ServiceDesk Plus and its status is updated as on hold, then ServiceDesk Plus will wait for one whole day, and if the status is not changed, it will then go ahead and execute this after rule here. So here I've configured a notification to end user asking them to provide for information. And then we've configured a repeat time of 1 day as well, and we've configured two more repetition. So once the initial notification is sent, ServiceDesk Plus will go back, it will wait for one more day and send the notification. And if the status hasn't moved, even then it will wait for one more day and send one last notifications. So since we have one original notification and two repetition, it would lead us to a total of 3 email reminders. And then let's say the status has still not moved from on hold status. ServiceDesk Plus will go to the next stage, and here we have a wait time of 1 day. So after the third notification is sent, we would wait for one more day before we go ahead and execute a during rule where we cancel the ticket. And here we update the status as cancelled, essentially cancelling out the ticket. So once this is done, the ticket will be cancelled and updated, and immediately after we are sending a notification using after rules where we notify the requester that the ticket has been cancelled due to lack of response. So here you can see how you can automate the entire process of handling a ticket, and IT admins don't have to interfere every day to check if there's a response or to update a ticket or and so on. ServiceDesk Plus literally does all the hard work for you using timer actions. So going back into the presentation, we saw how we can use timer actions to your benefit. The next feature I want to talk about is conditional actions, which will help you apply multiple actions or apply actions based on the first met condition. So this is essentially what I was talking about in request timer actions as if and if else. So both of these actions are called conditional custom actions, and they can be applied using automations like custom triggers or timer actions, and they're applicable only in request module for now. So using if, you can configure multiple criteria and apply actions whenever the criteria matches. And using if else, you can configure multiple actions, but only the first match criteria will be executed. So we'll now go into the application and we'll see how you can configure this. So as I was saying, you configure if and if else either in during rules or after rules, or you can go to custom triggers. And in the request module, you can create a trigger, and you can select the custom action here. So here we have if and if else again. Now in if and if else, you would notice that we have a criteria present again. Now this is completely different from the criteria for custom trigger. So when a custom trigger is applied or when a request or timer action is being applied, the initial criteria will decide if the custom trigger or timer action is applicable. And then when it goes to actions and you have if configured, ServiceDesk Plus will check the criteria, and if the criteria match, if the second criteria also matches, only then will the action be executed. So if is basically a string of conditions with a string of actions, and they can all be executed at the same time. So for example, let's say I want my category to be general, then I want a notification to be sent. So I'm going to select a notification and select a user to whom notification can be sent, and I'm saving it. Now I've configured a notification if my category is general. Or let's go and say, what if my category is not general and it is rather network? In which case, I want to execute a custom function. So I'm selecting the custom function here, and this action is saved. Now, what if other than category, I also want to check my priority? And so let me find priority. So if my priority is critical, then I want to execute another custom function. So you can see that I can configure multiple actions, multiple criteria, and multiple actions. And if more than one criteria matches, then all the relevant actions will be applied on the request. So you can basically bundle or nest multiple if conditions in one if block. And you can add up to 10 if conditions this way. And you would notice that once you add one if condition, you will not be able to add another if. You can add only one if condition per trigger or timer action. But you can add another if else, which is quite similar to if, but the only difference is instead of applying multiple actions which might be relevant, we only apply one action. So you define your primary criteria under this if block here. And in the if block, let's say that my main criteria I want to make sure is that the category is not empty, in which case you can select an action to be applied. And if this criteria is not met, then ServiceDesk Plus will move ahead and check the alternate criteria added under else if block. Now this will be your alternate criteria. Here you can say, okay, if the category is not empty, then maybe we can check the department. So here you're saying the department is engineering, in which case you can apply a custom function again. And then if you want to configure more alternate conditions, you can go ahead and add up to 8 else if block. So you would have one main if block, which would be your primary criteria, and 8 alternate conditions to be checked. And if none of the alternate or the primary condition is matched, you can go ahead and configure an else block, and which will be applied by default if the previous if or else conditions are not applied. So I'm going to select the default pathway. So let's delete this. So you can see that I have a primary condition and alternate condition, and if neither of them are satisfied, the else block will be applied by default. So the else block does not have any condition because it is always applied when no other conditions match. So this is how your if and if else work. So I hope I was clear. And the next feature I want to talk about is UEM integrations. So far in ServiceDesk Plus, we've had integration with one UEM tool called Endpoint Central, but we're now excited to bring in multiple integrations that will help IT admins manage and secure endpoint devices like laptops, mobile phones, workstations, and so on. So UEM refers to Unified Endpoint Management, and these are tools that are created and managed by ManageEngine. So we have integrated those tools with ServiceDesk Plus. So you can have a unified console where you can scan your inventory, where you can view your inventory details and initiate remote sessions. So the primary purpose of having UEM integration is that IT admins often receive incidents related to assets, and which would often involve them taking remote control of that asset. So this feature provides remote control for IT admins to their assets right within ServiceDesk Plus. And another benefit of having UEM integration is oftentimes the workstation details and the logged in information are managed in the UEM product. By integrating, you can import all of those details and auto assign owners to workstations based on who logged into the workstation last time. And this way, you can manage your assets from one unified console. So I'll now take you into the application where we'll see how we can configure the integration. So going up, we have integration under apps and add-ons, and here we have integrations present. So under managing integrations, you have UEM products. So inclusive of Endpoint Central, we have 5 more products, namely Patch Manager Plus, Remote Access Plus, Vulnerability Manager Plus, Application Control Plus, and Device Control Plus. And all of these integrations can be configured using the settings. So you can configure any one UEM tool at a time. You cannot configure more than that. So for now, we've configured Endpoint Central, and we have specified the server name and the port where the application is running in the server. You can select the protocol used, and enter the API key that is generated in the UEM tool. And once you test your connection and save, the connection will be established, and all your assets in the UEM tool will be imported to ServiceDesk Plus. You can scan them from ServiceDesk Plus, and so on. You can also perform other actions like installing or uninstalling software in the tool. You can take remote control. You can run script. You can perform other actions like locking your asset or putting it on standby, and so on. But these actions depend on which tool you're configuring for your UEM integration. So in Endpoint Central, we have all these features already available. But if you're configuring Remote Access Plus, you can only take remote control or tools menu. And for other actions, we only have remote control for now because it's the primary purpose. But you can always auto assign users as well. But when it comes to managing an asset through request, that is only available in Endpoint Central for now. And to achieve this, you can go into your request page. So let's go to the request tab. So here you can see that we have a request present, and let's say we are associating an asset to this request, and this asset should be managed in Endpoint Central as well. Now that the asset is present in the request, you can go ahead and let me reload the page. Okay, now that the asset is present in the request, you can go ahead and perform actions on this asset using this tools menu here. So you can log the asset. If I select this option, the asset will be logged even though I am not actually logged into the asset. I can shut down the asset remotely. I can initiate a chat with the user who is logged in the asset, or I can put it on standby and so on. So all of these actions can be performed only if the UEM tool is integrated. And if I want to take remote control of the asset, I can go to the Assets tab in ServiceDesk Plus. And here we are in the workstation list view. So here the asset is present. You can go to the asset details page, and I can scan the asset to fetch its latest details. I can take remote control of the asset to troubleshoot it and so on. So this is how your UEM integrations open up an IT admin's access into their assets. So going back, the next feature I want to talk about is maintenance module. So far in ServiceDesk Plus, we've been handling maintenance activities using an automation feature called preventive maintenance tasks. But now with the latest build and the latest release, we have brought in maintenance as a whole new model that will help your maintenance managers classify and schedule maintenances easily. So to access maintenance module, and accomplish certain tasks, you need to go to the module itself. And some of the benefits of doing that is that you can track the maintenance activities ahead of time using calendar view. You have a detailed insight into the entire maintenance details, and most importantly, you can pause and restart the maintenance anytime you need. So going into the application, you have maintenance module under the navigation menu, like I just said, and here you can see the maintenance list view. And let's say you want to create a maintenance, you can use this button here and select the template which you want to use to create the maintenance request. So by default we have request template. You can simply provide a title and description and go ahead and configure the details, or you can select an existing template and the template view will be rendered with its relevant fields and so on. So let me take you to an existing template. So this is already created, and here you can see that all the details have been configured right within the maintenance details. And once I click next, I can go ahead and schedule the maintenance. So I can say when I want the maintenance to start, if I want it to repeat, and if so, I can either select a date when it should repeat, or I can provide dynamic period like first Monday or second Tuesday and so on. And I can also repeat it once, just one time event, or I can repeat it daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And I can specify when I want the repetition to end. And once I configure this and update this, the maintenance will be saved, and ServiceDesk Plus will go ahead and start creating maintenance requests and assign them to the user we've selected here. So here we have a technician configured. So when the schedule is reached, ServiceDesk Plus will create the request and assign it to the relevant technician so that they can complete it properly. And all relevant SLAs or timer actions will be applied to the created maintenance request. And you can see the small calendar view here, which will help you track the requests that have been generated so far and all the upcoming requests. And if you want to pause the maintenance, like I was telling earlier, you can go to Actions menu and suspend the maintenance. So this will mean that the maintenance will be suspended. This is usually done because the maintenance might interfere with other activities and so on. And if you want to view the requests created by this maintenance, you can go to the request tab here. All requests will be present here. You can simply click them and you will be navigated to the request details page where the details will be logged. And finally, we have the history tab, which as the name suggests, you can use it to track all the operations performed in this maintenance schedule. And going back, we saw a small calendar that will help you track the maintenance activities in each maintenance. But we also have something called the calendar view, which will help you track the maintenance activities across all maintenances. So here you can see, get a bird's eye view of the request generated in each maintenance, of the request scheduled in upcoming maintenance. So you can go ahead and see that we have so many maintenance activities scheduled for the next month, and then you can plan your activities accordingly. Now, if you have suspended maintenances, you can go to your list view or your template view. So this is your list view and this is your template view. They are mostly similar. They just offer you a different way of looking at your details. So in list view or template view, you can go ahead and filter them by suspended maintenances. And then you can click this menu here to resume a maintenance. And at any point in time, if you want to generate a maintenance request manually, you can simply click this icon here and the request will be generated in the request module. Now, this generated request will not interfere with the maintenance schedule. So whatever requests have been scheduled will also be created. This is just for you to interfere manually and create a request anytime you need. And if you go to the request module, you will see that the maintenance request we just created is right on top with all its relevant details. So going back, the next feature I want to talk about is approval related, and this is quite a helpful feature for approvers because oftentimes end users raise for requests and then they request for approval, but the approver may not have complete detail or idea on what the request entails. So they might not understand the details, or they might find that they don't have enough data to take a proper decision, and in which case the approver would resort to emailing the requester or sometimes having conversations on call, which are often not logged in the request. So to avoid having conversations out of the scope of the ticket, we've brought in a feature called need clarification, where the approver can ask for questions, get their doubts clarified right within the request, and all conversations are logged in so that they can be revisited at any time in future. And so, as I was saying, this will help requesters this will help approvers ask for clarification before approving or rejecting requests, and you can do this right from the home page. So, going into the application, first let's go ahead and raise approval request. So we have a request created here just now by the maintenance module. So we'll just go ahead and create an approval for this request. So a quick nice interference from Zia is that you can see why we would ask for Zia's feedback, because as you can see here, we created a request from maintenance module, but Zia interfered and told us that this request would best be handled by different templates. So you can apply it or you can reject it. So this is how the AI helps users filter and manage their help desk better. So for now, we'll skip this. And to create an approval for a request, you need to go to the actions menu and submit for approval. So I'm going to select an approver and send the request to them. So you can see the approval tab is now logging the request. So we'll go into the approvers view and we'll see how they can ask for clarification. So the approver in this case is an end user. So when they log in, end users are usually greeted with a self-service portal. So this is how the self-service portal looks. And if you want to provide approval, you can provide them from My Approvals widget here. You can see this request is present here. So we're going to click on it. And the details are here. And you can see the request status says pending approval. And if you want to go ahead and ask for a question, you can either use this new clarification or you can simply enter details here and say provide more details. And you can say I need clarification. So the clarification will be sent to the requester, in which case it's the technician we just logged in. And you can see the status moves from pending approval to pending clarification. So now going back into the technician who raised the request, we'll see that if you go to their homepage, their summary widget would notify them there is a request needing their clarification. So if you click on it, you can see that the approver question is present here. So they can simply reply to this and say, send an email, check. And if you feel that the clarification you provided is more than sufficient, you can go ahead and resolve the clarification and you can add it as a reply. So once you proceed, the clarification will be added. And now the approver who just requested for approval will be able to see that the request clarification is resolved and the request is back to pending approval status. You You click this banner, you will be shown all the relevant conversations. If you want, you can go ahead and ask more clarification questions. You can reply to existing questions, reopen the existing clarification, and so on. So for now, we are going to say okay and approve the request. And thus the request moves forward. So this is how end users can end users and approvers can log all their conversations right within ServiceDesk Plus. Now, if you go into the application, you will notice that initially we submitted the request for approval from the details page. So in the details page, if you could go to the approvals tab, you would notice that the conversation is logged here. However, you must remember that you cannot ask for clarification from this page. This tab only records the approval related conversations. If you need for clarification, you have to do it from the home page. So going back, the next feature I want to talk about is how you can resolve problems and handle problem requests using triggers and custom functions. So we've had custom triggers already introduced for request and change module, but we've now decided to automate problem management using custom triggers as well. And using custom triggers, you can send notifications, you can execute scripts, and you can execute custom functions. So we'll now go ahead and see how this can be achieved. So again, custom triggers are present in the admin tab. So if you're a regular member of a masterclass series, you would already know what custom trigger does. But if you're new here, then let me explain it to you. So custom triggers are used to trigger actions on problem requests when a certain operation occurs or a certain condition is met. So this is done on request after they come into the help desk. So the user might create a problem request, and the problem request could be in your help desk. And when you say maybe create a problem request, or you edit it, or after you delete it, the custom trigger could be applied. Now, custom triggers are created using this option here. So first you create a trigger group, and in each trigger group, you can add a number of custom triggers. So you can add a trigger here. And let's say here I want to say edit problem trigger. So I want to execute a custom trigger when a problem is edited. I can provide a description, and I can say that this has to be applied only when the trigger is edited. And then we have a field called execute during, which will help me decide when I want the trigger to be applied. So again, if you apply a trigger outside operational hours, oftentimes users might end up missing the vital automations performed. Or in some cases, you might want to apply automations outside the operational hours. You can define all of that here, and then you can define what should be the cascade execution of the remaining custom triggers. Do you want to execute the next rule, or do you want to skip the remaining rules in the particular group or across all groups? So you can define that here, and then you can go ahead and define the condition. So here you can select a condition. For example, I could say I want this trigger to be applied when a problem is edited and the problem impact is critical. So I can specify the condition. And since we selected edited as our action, we have this particular field show up. In case you have selected created, you would notice the field is not there. So this field applies only for edited, because when you edit a field and you specify criteria, you need to mention if you want the trigger to be applied every time the problem request is being edited and the criteria is met, or only the first time. So after a request is created, a problem request is created, you might have the impact as critical, and but the trigger will not be applied because it is only applied when it is edited. And the first time you edit a problem request and you update the impact, in which case the ServiceDesk Plus would see, okay, the request is being edited and the criteria is met, so the trigger will be applied. And then you go ahead and edit the request a second time, and you apply and you upload maybe a backout plan, in which case ServiceDesk Plus would see, yes, the problem request is edited and the impact is still critical, but this is not the first time. So if you select this option, you would say this is not the first time, this is the second time, so the trigger will not be reapplied. But if you select every time, then each and every time the problem request is edited and the condition is applicable, then the trigger will be applied over and over again. So you need to configure that clearly here, and then you can select the action to be applied. So for problem custom triggers, we have notification action, we have custom functions, and execute scripts. So I just explained what custom functions and scripts do. And as I was saying, custom function is being introduced to problem module for the first time. So you can select a custom function and select it, and you can maybe save it. If you want to configure new custom functions, you can go to developer space here, and here we have custom functions present. So all custom functions for various modules are logged here. You can see that we have a number of custom functions for request module already. We've also introduced default custom functions for problems module. So these are built into the applications. You can simply enable them if needed, and you will be able to associate them in custom triggers. And you can see that each custom function does different values. So just now we saw about this function here. So we associated this function to the custom trigger. You can see that what it does is it auto assigns a task owner as a problem owner, and you can specify the function name and description. And if you have the API name configured, you can use the API name to call one custom function from another custom function. And you can configure the function here and always ensure that your function returns this particular value. Now this is an existing custom function which is built into ServiceDesk Plus. You can also create a new custom function, provide the name and description, provide the API name to call this function, and compile your own function here. So this will give you your freedom to basically design your own custom action to be performed, thereby expanding your scope of problem management. So the next feature I want to talk about is security meter. So security meter will help you measure the security level of your application. So this can help you avoid any zero-day attacks. And you can basically classify the level of security and make sure that you can update the security when needed. So security meter is usually present in admin tab for non ESM instances or non ESM builds. So here we have security settings. If you visit this page, you will have security meter. But since this is an ESM build where I have configured multiple instances, for me to see security meter, I have to go to the ESM directory. And in the ESM directory, we have security settings here. So here you can see the security meter, which is currently showing that I have weak security. So let's say I want to improve my security ranking. I can view the security configurations related that will help me improve my security meter ranking. And I can see that I have not configured a lot of security settings. So if I want to configure them, I can simply select them, and ServiceDesk Plus will redirect me to the relevant page where I can configure the security setting. And once I've configured the setting and save it, then my ranking would improve, thereby assuring me that my application and the data are being safe and sound. So going back, the next and the last feature I want to talk about is how you can manage the visibility of user-specific fields. So previously, we've had user fields displayed to all logged in users based on their roles or scope or permissions. But now, to prevent unnecessary data exposure and any data leak, we've decided to allow the administrators to decide if they want to restrict certain user fields from being exposed at all. So this can help you. Obviously, you can avoid displaying sensitive user data, and you can control the visibility by configuring an inclusion and an exclusion list. So we'll go ahead and see how this can be achieved. So to configure user specific field restrictions, we need to go back to the instance, and under the admin tab, we can go to general settings and advanced portal settings. So in the advanced portal settings, you have multiple tabs like general, requester, and technician. Visit the requester tab if you want to decide how to handle the requester related fields. So you can see this configuration here. This is where you can configure how the fields that should be displayed to requesters. So here I've included a number of fields that can be shown. So I can use this icon here and say I don't want to show the CI type or department name, or I don't want to show the mobile details, and save them. Now, any requester who has access to their uh, other requester request, or if maybe they have access to certain modules because they might be approvers, they will not be able to view any details other than the fields configured here. And if I want, I can also exclude certain fields. But note that you can either include the fields to be shown or you can exclude the fields to be shown. You cannot configure both at the same time. So this is for requesters. If you want to configure the same for technicians, go to your technician tab and you have the same configuration for technicians. So here I've excluded certain technician details from being displayed at all. So any technician, no matter what their scope and permission is, they cannot view these details for other technicians and other requesters as well. Only the SD admin and the SD site admin will have access to the excluded or restricted data. So this way you can ensure that your application data and especially your sensitive information is being restricted or being protected from exposure. So we've come to the end of this session, and to give a quick recap, we just saw how you can choose actions to apply using timer actions that can execute actions during and after a specific time delay. We then saw how you can apply conditional actions in requests using if and if-else conditions. We then saw about UEM integrations that will help you scan and manage your assets better. And then we saw how you can use the maintenance module to plan your maintenance activities ahead of time. We then checked out the ask for clarification feature that will help you ask for clarification from your requesters as an approver. We then saw how you can improve your problem management automations using custom triggers and how you can use custom functions to widen your scope of actions. And finally, we checked out security related features such as security meter and how you can prevent data exposure by configuring restrictions for user fields. So if you have any questions, I hope you've been adding them to the questions panel. Our expert on call is available to answer them. And before we run into the question session, I want to draw your attention to a couple of resources that can help you greatly, especially in understanding ServiceDesk Plus. So we have admin guides present for both end users and administrators. And these guides will help you understand how you can hack ServiceDesk Plus better and how you can understand the various features present. We also have release notes that will help you track all our latest releases and the latest features. We then have huge number of product videos present in our YouTube channel. All our existing masterclass videos are always uploaded to a YouTube channel, so do check them out if you have any doubts. You have a community where you can contact your peers and a support portal where you can contact a support team anytime. And finally, if you have any questions or feedback, you can always send them to hello@servicedeskplus.com. So as I was saying, this is the last conclusive episode of this year's masterclass. So thank you for joining us and being a part of this journey. So I hope I can see you all again in the next year's masterclass. Until then, it's a bye-bye from Steph.